Hey everybody, and welcome to Bits of Board, where we're talking board games, miniatures, cards, and dice. My name's Michael, and today we're going to be checking out one of my favorite games of 2016, and that is this one here, A Feast for Odin. Now this is a Viking game that's a little bit unlike some of the Viking games that you might have seen before. This is not your Blood Rage style Viking game. You're not going out conquering areas, sending off monsters into battle, sending your units to Valhalla. It's nothing like that. This is more of your secret life of Vikings, where they're going to be, raiding, hunting, building buildings, doing all the good things that Vikings do. As well as the everyday stuff like, farming, going to the markets, milking cows, and eating. This is A Feast for Odin. Now, A Feast for Odin is the descendant of some of the most legendary games out there in the board gaming world. I'm talking games like Agricola and Caverna here. There are others from Uwe Rosenberg, but this one it carries on the same feeling that you've played in those games before, but it also manages to stand apart. At heart, A Feast for Odin is a worker placement game, where you take actions using a growing force of Vikings, and through these actions you collect goods for storage in the homeland. Now this introduces a new sort of spatial awareness puzzle element to the game, where you take the things that you've earned throughout your jobs and daily lifestyles of Vikings, placing them on the board, creating a greater income in both currency as well as other special items. Let me show you. Let's take a look at the individual player boards. Okay guys, so here we've got the player board, and we're going to be taking a look at this spot on the left hand side, which is basically your placement area for all the items and stuff that you're going to be collecting throughout the game. You're going to be using these items to do a bunch of different things on this board. You're going to use it to increase your income. So right now my income is represented by the lowest number on this diagonal here. As soon as I cover up a couple of those, my income rises to 2. Brilliant. Now I can't just go ahead and cover things up like this all willy-nilly. I've actually got to cover up the box before I can cover up the next point there. So that's why there's these little shaded sections in there. I can also gain an income of not just, coins and money to be used throughout the game. I can use it to gain new items. So if I successfully block in one of the printed resources on the board, I gain an income of that every round. So here, I've gained 1 beer token every round. Yes! The other thing that you're going to be wanting to do throughout the game is blocking out some of these -1s on the board, because for every one of those that remains uncovered at the end of the game, you lose a point. So at some point you're going to be wanting to put some of those larger items out here. Now there's a couple of placement rules here, as noted by this little graph down the bottom here. Blue items can be placed next to each other. That's fine. They can be placed pretty much anywhere on the board. Green items are not as good quality as the blue items, so they actually can't be placed next to each other, touching on an edge. So if I was going to place 2 green ones next to each other, best I could do is corner to corner. I can also go ahead and place the silver currency that I earn in my income stage, as well as ore blocks that I come across in the game. So the home board is not the only location that we're going to be placing our earned goods. We've also got islands to discover, which allow us to get a bit of an income in of some more valuable items. But to combat that, there are a bunch of negative point values on there. Now each of these islands are double-sided, and they're flipped throughout the game if they're not claimed by the player. Players can also choose to purchase other locations throughout the game where they can store goods. These ones here can actually store the food-related goods, not just the blue and green ones. This one here can store resources of wood and stone, and this one's a bit of a combination of both. Now, what are these resources, you might ask? Well, the game comes with 2 trays that you fill to the brim with resources, and these represent different things throughout the game. So the orange ones represent farm foods, the red ones represent animal foods, the green items represent craft products, and the blue items represent luxury goods. So what it comes down to is really making the most of what you've got on the player board and, placing things smartly and at the right time. So how do you go about getting all these goods and stuff to put on your boards? Let's check out the worker placement board. Alrighty, so this is the worker placement board and it is a doozy. There are so many different actions that you can make use of on your turn, and yeah, it just goes on and on. Now there are a couple of things to bear in mind when you're having a look at this. Anything in the first column, that only requires one worker to activate. Second column requires 2 workers. Third column requires 3 workers. And fourth column, you guessed it, requires 4 workers. Now the bonuses for actually playing a third column action is you get to draw an occupation card, and if you're playing a 4 worker action, you get to play an occupation card. So this one allows you to draw one, this allows you to play one for free. I'll explain occupation cards shortly. Let's have a look at some of these actions though. The board's pretty good in that it groups similar actions together. So we've got our build houses action here. And these allow you to spend different resources to build some of those locations that I showed you before. The building ships section here, our hunting actions here, and they pretty much go hand in hand with our raiding and pillaging actions. So I'll go through them a little bit later. Next up, we've got our livestock actions where we can pay some silver to gain livestock. We've got our market here where we can gain produce and silver coins. Products where we can, make things out of stuff that we've already got. So we can gain milk from our cows, or I think it's just wool from our sheep, something like that anyway. Over here we've got our crafting where we can actually change up some of our existing items. So as an example, this is some flax here. We can change that into a linen bolt. Easy. Over here we've got mountains. Now mountains are an interesting little resource. These strips are drawn out throughout the game and loaded up with different resources. So we've got some wood, some stone, and some silver. And as we take our mountain actions, we're actually able to take resources from these boards. Now you can't just pick whatever resource you want. So this particular trade action here says we can take 2 resources from any one mountain strip. And if this was full, we'd be able to take 2 wood. Not bad. Over here in the 3 worker action, we would be able to make use of 2 mountain ranges, taking 3 resources from one and 2 resources from the other. This section also includes some trade actions, which you can use to upgrade your items. Then we've got our sailing actions down here, which also allows us to access the raiding and pillaging actions, as well as our settling actions for some of the other islands. Finally, we've got our emigration and occupation section, which allows us to make use of the emigration actions, as well as finding new ways to gain and play occupation cards. So I mentioned the occupation cards there. These can be gained throughout the game and played as a way to sort of focus your machine, I guess. Allowing you to take more specialized actions and basically forging a way through the game that is going to get you the most points. The game provides a good number of starting occupation cards that may allow you to take a focus from the very beginning of the game, but then also accommodates a huge number of cards that can be drawn throughout the game. The game comes with 3 full decks that can be, shuffled together, played together, as a way that new players, they can ease into the occupation thing, and experts of the game will have a full range of choices that they can, drive themselves crazy with. We also have weapon cards that are drawn pretty regularly throughout the game, and these help with all of the dice-related actions that you can select on the placement board. Now, it wouldn't be an Uwe Rosenberg game if we didn't have to feed our workers, and this game introduces a very, very unique way that we have to go about this. Now, it's not as cutthroat as we find in Agricola, but it is still something that you've got to keep in mind. Now, during setup of the game, you actually start with 5 workers, but as soon as the first round hits, your first action is to take a new worker. After worker placement rounds, you then have to feed your population. To do so, you take food items gained throughout the game and place them on these spaces up here. As an example, I have some salted meat, some peas, and a fish, and that would then feed my population. Now there are some certain rules that you have to follow here. You can't have two red items next to each other, nor two orange items next to each other. You can use silver to help feed. And what else? There's one more rule, is that you can't actually have more than one item placed horizontally. So here I've got my salted meat placed horizontally because that gives me the most coverage, but the other two items I have to place vertically. Now there is plenty to do in this game. Through the worker actions you can gain livestock, as in cows and sheep, and they can breed throughout the game, gaining you victory points and, a worst case scenario, a source of food as well. We've also got the mountains and their landscapes that we use throughout the game to collect things like wood, stone, ore, and the silver currency as well, a bit of cash. All of these elements combine so nicely together, creating a very unique Euro worker placement game, I guess. There's so much to think about it. You forge your own path, taking different tactics throughout the game, and so much you actually have to respond to, especially when you're getting blocked out by other players on the worker placement board. There's so much replayability in this game, even just from those starting occupation cards. Finding a new way to focus your early game is really helpful for new players as well, giving you kind of an easy way out where you don't have to go in, all right, what's my strategy going to be? And while some advanced players might see this as a take me by the hand and show me what I've got to do kind of thing, it really does give each playthrough a new flavour and just gives you a new path throughout the game each time. Now most of my playthroughs have been at the 2-player count, which kind of works as you're learning the game because things aren't too tight. You're always going to have some option on the worker placement board, whereas I think at that 3 and 4 player mark, things are going to get a little bit more cutthroat. You're actively going to be blocking players from the actions that they want, and in turn you're going to have to come up with some new ways to accomplish the things that you wanted to as well. I also think it's a hugely successful solo game as well. Not only does it give you a relatively quick and easy setup for such a big Euro game like this, but it also gives you the challenge and some of those mind-melting moments where you got to think, I need to do this. How am I going to get there? Wow, how? I really do think this is a wonderful game. It gives you that sense of adventure and of accomplishment that, it's kind of hard to find in some of these ones. Sometimes you look at a board and you're like, oh, I moved some cubes. Go me. But in this one, there's a certain chaos to the player board after you finish. You look down and you're going, how did I get all that stuff to my homeland? How did I get out there and take over that island and still manage to score some points off it? It really holds true as one of the most interesting games around right now, and definitely one of my favorites of last year. Alright, so that's about it for our look at A Feast for Odin today. I hope you enjoyed checking out the game as much as I enjoy playing the damn thing. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. As always, my name's Michael. This is Bits of Board. We'll catch you next time.